someone that's super special to me. I've known her for many years. The one and only Megan Sillito, everyone.
Woo!
Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited.
Yes.
So I met you probably 6 years ago.
Something like that.
Yeah, because I was introduced to you by Cody Derrick because you were coaching with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I need a new coach. And in our conversation, he brought you up. And so I hired you as my coach. I was right in the middle of thinking whether I should start this company or not. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And so guys, Megan was the person who coached me through launching Innovation Title. And then after that, I keep coming back to you on and off throughout the years. And here we are 6 years later. Currently I'm coaching with you, and you have been a huge blessing in my life. You've just helped me seriously change from the inside out, big transformation. So you've been that for me. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an honor. It really is. Like, you can have all the tools in the world, you can have all the expertise in the world, but if you don't have somebody that's willing to be uncomfortable and get uncomfortable and hear feedback, and
we have gotten uncomfortable. We have gotten really uncomfortable.
Right? And I think, that's really, if you want something different, you have to do something different, and doing something different often requires that uncomfortability of kind of being on the edge of like, but the other side of that is so amazing, as you know.
Yes, yeah. It is. Our last coaching session, I was telling you how I feel completely different, from when I started to where I am now. I run my business completely different. I create differently. I feel much more peace, and I'm much more centered in my life, from when I started back then. I was so in the grind and just, working. And not that I'm not working, but I've shifted to how I'm working.
Right.
And so that's been so fun to be in this space. And I'm like, I don't want to be in a different space. Like, this is really fun and this is really good. But why don't you tell us a little bit about you? I mean, I know you, but I would love for our audience to hear a little bit of your story, how you got into this, and why you do what you do.
Well, it's because I was super messed up, and I think a lot of people who get into this kind of work, be it therapy, be it coaching, are oftentimes looking for answers that they're having a difficult time finding. And as they get the liberation of, doing the inner work, then we tend to want to give it back and go, wow, I really got it that when you change something on the inside, like a block or a belief that you didn't know that you had, and you challenge it, a whole world's open up, and that to me is the best gig ever. Is I get to show people who they are. I get to show them new worlds and new vistas, right? How does it get better than that? But I got into it. I had a lot of childhood abuse, a lot of really sort of interesting stories. I tell people I could have done 4 Oprah shows with my life history,
Wow.
And so when I was looking for help, I wasn't functioning very well at all. And it was through the process of my own healing journey that I wanted to turn around and help other people, because I realized that how many people like me have tons of potential, but just have stuff sticking them. I didn't think I had any gifts. I didn't think I had any use on the planet, And so, and I was really trying to take myself out. There was no purpose. But I think the reason why it felt so crappy is I have a huge purpose, right? It's if people are kind of going along and they're kind of futzing about and they're, kind of messing things up in their lives, and they don't really care that much. Like I had a whole group of friends that didn't have the same angst as me. They were living the same life as me of just like partying and checking out and stuff like that, but they didn't have the same angst as me. And I think the angst of like why my life wasn't working and like is this all there is, like had to do with the fact that I had a bigger purpose. And it was tapping me, you know, and so it drove me to finally figure out like who I was and to heal and to give myself a chance to be what I could be.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the truth being like wanting to find you.
Right.
So that you could shine and be, just be in that purpose. That's awesome.
I think that, you know, anything that you're experiencing right now, be it relationship or your work or life or whatever, if you're really unhappy, it's actually because there's some gifts there and you're trying to get to them. If there weren't gifts there, it would be bearable for you. If there weren't gifts in the mess, it would be bearable. Like, okay, fine. You know, I have a railroad relationship with my husband. It's fine. Right. But if you're like, have that kind of relationship and you're miserable in it, it means that there's something better for you. There's something more for you. And so that's the gift in the discomfort too, talking about discomfort, right? That's
where the growth will come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You've been doing this work for many years. I mean, I remember having conversations with you where you were like, I was tapping into this long before any of this work was so conscious within humanity, you know, that you were having these type of conversations and around your family, your friends, and people just thought you were just crazy. Like, what are you talking about? How can you use the word create? You know, and so when did you, because I mean, how old were you when you started this whole process of getting into this conscious space?
I would say it started popping in around 30, around 29. Like I had some really big events happen. One of my best friends was killed in a drunk driving accident. And it was a huge wake up call for me. And I took it, you know, and I was so mad that my friends didn't take the wake up call, but I realized it wasn't for them. You know, it was my wake up call. And I just started looking for something else, for something more. And it was 25 years ago this October that I went through my rapid eye training. It was 25 years ago this month that I actually like prayed. And I don't like, I left the Mormon church when I was 15 and I was like, screw all that. But I was so unhappy in my life that I just sort of dropped to my knees and I said, look, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you are, but like, I can't live like this. So you need to show me something better. Otherwise I'm out.
Wow.
Like, that's it, you know? And it was like one of those moments where I was like, I did not comprehend going and punching a time clock every day. I did not like, it didn't make any sense to me. Right. And so, and it was really interesting because a couple of days after that, a really good friend of mine that I'd been playing tennis with, she called me up and she said, you know, I'm doing this weird rapid eye thing. She says, I think you should come have some sessions. I'm like, I need to get some practicum. I need to get so many hours or whatever. And I'm like, oh, couldn't hurt. Right.
I don't have a lot to do right now, so sure.
I know. It was kind of like that. I'm like, what the hell?
Okay.
You know?
That's awesome.
And that's a quality of mine that I think takes me a long ways, is my willingness to try things that are weird and different and unusual, because
I'm so open. Yes.
So, you know, because it's like, if the path to change was logical, you'd have done it by now. Right?
So good.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I was like, what the hell? You're gonna move a little thing in front of my eyes and I'm gonna blink and I'm gonna be better. Cool. Like, you know, I didn't have a lot of hope, but I was willing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then within about 6 weeks, my life was really different. Like all of a sudden, like it was just, I felt different. I was different. I was like, whoa. And then she said to me in one of our sessions, she goes, you know, I think you'd be good at this. And I'm like, no. And so, but she knew something I didn't.
She saw something in you.
She saw something in me that I didn't, which is the the awesomeness of mentors, right?
Mhm.
And she actually called the Rapid Eye Center because at the time I was in sales and marketing. And she called the Rapid Eye Center and said, you know, I know you're looking for somebody. I have somebody for you. And they required that you went through the training. So she actually got me a free training for trade, right?
That's awesome.
Right. But I never went there for that reason. I went there because it was going to work for them.
Oh.
Because I hadn't bought into this, that I was going to do this weird thing yet. Right? And, you know, bear in mind, this is 25 years ago.
Yeah.
This is like, these conversations were not happening in any kind of public sphere at all. This was way, way off the grid, this kind of stuff, right?
I can imagine.
It was weird, right? And I walk in this room and everybody's like hugging me and telling me they love me. And I'm like, you don't even know me. What's the matter with you? You know, that's how different I was, right?
Yeah.
Back then. And it just, coming into the training, we had to have a session with one of the trainers so that they knew where we were at and that we were clear enough to do the work and all of that. And my session happened to be with the founder. Her name is Renee Johnson. And at the end of the session, she goes, well, what are you thinking about with regards to your practice? And I'm like, that's not why I'm here. And she goes, consider the reason you think you're here is not why you're here. And I was like, oh,
that's
dun,
so
dun, dun, you know? And the rest is history. Like I took the pill, the blue pill. What is it? I don't know if it's the blue.
I don't know the red or the blue, but you took the one.
I took the one because I have been crazy for consciousness ever since, like in every way. If you could show me that putting my head in a bucket would like create more, I'd do it. Like that's kind of my nature. And so my path has been just sort of gathering different tools because I realized that there's one size does not fit all. Like everybody has a unique journey, and the more tools that I can bring to the table to help people find their way and their path of like how they can find what they need to find for themselves, you know. And I also just love learning stuff, but I also realize that certain modalities are good for certain things, and that kind of, they can only take you so far. And if you want that, then you need to get a different tool, you know. So
I love that you're such a big teacher, but you also continue learning. You never stop learning. I mean, you just came in this morning, told me you're joining a very not so economical program, you know, you're investing in yourself. You keep doing that so that you can grow, so you can continue teaching. And I think that's so beautiful. And like the way that you teach me really, really works for me, you know, because we had a huge breakthrough a couple weeks ago, and it was around relationships, which is what I want to talk to you about today. But I've been doing a lot of work around this area for the past few years, especially the last year and a half, I would say, and learning a lot. But you asked me like these very specific questions where it helps me wake up, you know, and it helps me discover. And that is the most beautiful thing about a coach, you know, that you say the right questions so that we can self-discover. You're not telling me, you know, what it is. You're helping me just discover it. So yeah, it really works for me, which is why I keep coming back.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit about relationships there. Shall we get into our topic?
Let's do it. Let's get
down. Let's get in there. And I really wanted to touch base on this, and I have not had this conversation at all in my podcast, but perhaps because I've been learning so much about it and struggling so much with it in my own ways. There's been so many lessons for me around this area. And it's one that I continue to learn about. And I think it's probably a lifelong thing. But I think one of the biggest things that I've discovered in my journey of learning all this is there are so many triggers from our childhood that show up in our relationship. Do you know Esther Perel? Have you heard of her? She's into this area very much. She has a few books. She's a genius in relationships, and she often talks about it. She'll say, you know, in her books and even her podcasts or her YouTube videos, because I'll sit there and just watch or listen or whatever, and she'll say, tell me how you were loved, and I'll tell you how you make love. Tell me how you were loved as a child, and I'll tell you how you do love now.
Wow, I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
That's
and
so good.
She's seriously so good. Mark Rose is someone I also very much follow in this area. And so that's been like a big thing for me, just really understanding that how much, and this goes into psychology altogether, right? Like how much your childhood really does impact your adulthood. But I think relationships, it really does. And it really shows up there because you're the most vulnerable in that space, because it's that deep love. So tell us more about this, because you know way more.
I know enough to be dangerous. And in full disclosure, I would say that relationship is my Achilles heel. Like it's the area of my life that I think is the most challenging, and it's one of those, like, I really believe that the places in life where we have the most challenges often where the most gifts are too. So I also know that I have gifts in that place.
So there's going to be a gift for me too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I
know. Same.
Yeah. You're going to be good. You're going to be amazing. Yes. I think one of the things that's the most difficult about relationship is that when you're triggered in relationship, you're in an area of your brain that's very old. It's like your childhood, those childhood experiences, those childhood wounds. And it's sort of located in our survival part of our brain. So when they get hit, those triggers get hit, we go into fight or flight. And in fight or flight, everything's right or wrong, good or bad, black and white. And we're in panic, fear. I call it the 4 F's, right? Fear, freeze, faint, fight, and flee. Those are the 4 F's.
Oh, wow.
And you see them in the animal kingdom. And the thing is we don't necessarily have a vote about what our F is. Like your F is your F, right?
Yeah.
And so generally you'll have a primary F and a secondary F. So my primary F is freeze. So I'll do like, rah, right? And then as soon as I can unthaw, I will flee. So I'm a freeze fleer. And I tend to get together with fighters, which those two trigger each other into more fear, which is really fun and not that fun. But the problem with relationship dynamic is that even if you have read all the books, done the coaching and all of that, when you get triggered, you're not in an area of your brain where you learned your tools, where you learned your communication skills. So it's very hard, even though you know what to do. And that's been frustrating for me because I know what creates success in relationships. But when I'm in that place, I can't get to the part of me that knows. It's very, very difficult, and I have tools for that too, of like, okay, take a walk, let's breathe, like I know I have tools for that, but I think that's one of the things that makes relationships so challenging, because in that deep, if you are intimate with somebody, like deeply intimate with somebody, they can get to places that nobody else can, that no other situation can. And they can get to hurts that are so old, right? And yes, we'll hit those things. And if we're being an entrepreneur, I think entrepreneurism is another very powerful spiritual path, transformational path, if you let it be, right? But I don't know that it's as bad, but it's as intense as relationship.
It's not.
Because,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
because it hits these little wires. Now, there's a few unicorns out there that they just don't have a lot of stuff in relationship. Like they just sort of easy for them. Like my mentor's Katie Hendricks, and I did, they're considered the relationship coaches, right?
Oh, wow.
And they've been on Oprah several times, 20 best-selling books, and I apprenticed with them for 6 years. And one of the reasons I did is I learned their material in 2 years, but I kind of was like, wow, I never saw something like that before. Like two people who were really connected, had really great passion, had amazing co-creation, had learned how to create wealth and abundance together, walked their talk. I'd never seen anything like that. Like I
Wow.
felt like I was looking at a rare animal in a zoo. Like I was like, whoa, because relationship in my family was really messed up. Like how relationship was done was with like a lot of us was super messed up. So a lot of why I spent so much time was seeing what was possible, like this really is possible. Okay, good to know.
That's so awesome.
Right?
I want to meet these. Oh, I want to follow these people.
Yeah, I'll give you their website, hendricks.com.
Oh,
You know,
awesome.
ICKS. And not to be confused with Hendricks with an X, who's also a relationship expert, but it's
Oh, okay.
Gay and Katie Hendricks. And it was really, really powerful work. But I also learned from that some people just have a knack for it. And it's kind of like, like Mozart came out playing the piano, right? He was kind of this prodigy who could just go, some people can get to Mozart, but it takes, 5,000 more hours to get there kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
I think the same is true in relationship. I think some people kind of have that easy way about it. And it's like, oh, relationships are easy, but they're kind of unicorns. I don't see them very much.
Me neither.
For most of us out there, relationships are a big challenge.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a relationship that's meaningful, if you're going to do an intimate relationship, a lot of people, they don't dare go there. And so the relationship becomes more about convenience and, okay, this works because we're raising the kids and, we have two people paying the mortgage but it's not intimate. We see these couples out in restaurants. They're not looking at each other. They're not talking to each other. They're on their phone. They're reading the newspaper. They're not really
Comfortable
together.
and convenient, right?
Right. That's not what I'm talking about. Those relationships are pretty easy to maintain until some haywire trips that, like something happens. But if you're actually in the game called exposing yourself, and like being willing to be vulnerable and create that deep connection, it's going to trigger you right to your bones. Like it's going to get in there when the thing happens that you don't want to happen and that you're scared is always going to happen based on how you were loved when you were little. When that happens with somebody you're really, really connected to, it's a refiner's fire. It's very intense.
And I think I've been in relationships where that's completely blocked, the emotional side of someone, and I couple lately. But and then there was obviously some lessons for me, and why am I attracted to emotionally unavailable people, right? And there were some big lessons there for me. But with that said, if you're not able to be fully open, and I think it's so scary. It's so scary because you're really letting someone in to see all of you, all the good, the bad, the ugly, and so then people put up the walls to not allow that. But what I've realized is when you don't allow fully to be vulnerable, you're also blocking the potential of the passion and the love and the beauty in it. So it's like, are you willing to not risk being completely open and vulnerable so that you can experience the highest of the best, feelings in that emotional space or not? So it's almost like you have to dare to go there and be brave to go there. And then if you don't, you really block potential.
Yep. It's kind of like in nature. I don't know if you know this, but homeopathy teaches us that the medicine and the poison are right next to each other. So the plant that's poisonous, the antidote to it is generally very close. It's generally the closest plant. And I think that's true in relationship, is that the poison and the medicine are right next to each other, meaning that the thing you need to heal is right next to the thing that triggers it. And so it's all in that same little soup right there. And that's partly why it's so intense. If you're going to do a relationship, the kind that we're talking about, that's conscious,
Yes.
where you're instead of blaming the person, you're looking at what it's bringing up for you. And your reaction to something is way more valuable. Your awareness of why you're reacting is way more powerful than you trying to figure out what they're doing to you. You know, that doesn't get you very far.
The biggest key,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, I've experienced some recently where I'm like, oh, the fear of abandonment, the fear and the triggers. And it's so difficult to deal with, you know, like when you're in the moment, just kind of like what you said, you're like, oh my gosh, you're in it. We know some of this information. We have the tools because we've been studying it. You way more than I, because I just started, I feel, but, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know this, but what it has done for me is knowing and having the tools so that I am aware. I'm like, wow, this just triggered me. And why did this trigger me? And what is the real wound?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helped me heal a lot of the wounds from the past so that I can move on with my life and as a better self, you know. Right. And there are so many, though they just keep showing up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I did work on that. And I thought that was buried. And then holy shit, like this just came up and you just helped me discover some deep stuff just a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, wow, I just had no idea it was there. It was intense, you know. And so I think another part too, to relationships, and if we want to grow into showing up as a better self in the relationship, is that we have to face the hard work. We have to face those wounds. We have to face in ourselves and just do the work, you know, and be willing to. And I think that's something that if more people were willing to do, perhaps it'd look different. And but who knows, right? I'm just testing this, and I'm not in a relationship right now. So no, it's like, okay, Nuria, let's put this to the test, because it's like, okay, I've been working on this a lot. And so, you know, hopefully when that time comes, I can show up better and I can be a better person. And now I can recognize that there were a lot of things that I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely could have shown up better for these people, you know, and had different conversations and all that, but it's all a lesson and it's all part of the journey. But I loved how, you know, let's talk about polarity. And because you've taught me a lot of that too. And Tony Robbins talks about it a lot too. A lot of teachers, that the polarity between feminine and masculine energy. And then also just those fast connections that sometimes when we meet someone and we're like, whoa, right? Tell us a little bit about that, because I just experienced one, and you taught me some stuff there.
Well, there's two parts to this. One is that when you meet somebody and like all the bells go off and you're like, whoa, this is different. I've never felt like this. Whoa. Beware, because people think that means, oh, I found the one. Okay. And as soon as you go to I found the one, then some part of you tunes out to the flags. Right? And it's like, no, they're so cute and they're just perfect for me and da, 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 da. So when we're in that place, we don't see what we don't see. And it's because we've made this conclusion that they're the one, because I've never felt like this before. But what I know about that is that oftentimes, and I'm going to get a little wooey here, is that we attract somebody who kind of feels like a soulmate or is a soulmate, but their job with us is to wake us up. Their job with us is to bring something to light that we haven't experienced or seen before in ourselves. And their job isn't necessarily to stay with us long term. Like oftentimes those big booms are just wake up calls to ourselves. And if you get that, right, and you're willing to do the work, then go for it. Hop in, get in, right? If you're not willing to allow yourself to get messy or to be blown open, then you should probably run from a relationship like that, because the relationship like that will bring that up, because in part, you have to have a certain level of depth with a person, a certain level of connection to get to those deeper wounds. So only somebody who's super, super connected to you can get you to those core pieces. If you're only mildly connected to somebody, they're not going to get in those doors. But if there's
totally
that person that's like, oh, it's like you want to let them in. You're like, yeah, let's do this, right?
That's so
but
true.
they infiltrate all the way into those core wounds, because whatever it is that you believed about love, whatever construct you took on about love when you were a child, and sometimes that construct is taken on in infancy because of an experience or something. Oh, like I was, my mother gave me up for adoption. So love means being left.
Oh,
right. Yeah. And then I was adopted by her mother, who's my grandmother, and it was all hidden. So the people that loved me lied to me. So love is a lie.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, that's why I say it's my Achilles heel, because I've got some very deep constructs around love that I have to continually unfetter, you know? So when the next time I feel that cocoon kind of love from infancy, right? So our first experience of love is when our mother holds us, right? And it's that, and you know, if you've ever held a baby, like you don't even have to be its mother. It's like there's something we come with that pulls out this big energy from people. Like that's why we all love babies. There's something about a baby, that openness, the vulnerability, whatever. It's like
the purity.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. You know? And so that is our first experience of love. And whatever goes down with that then becomes our belief about love, right? So when somebody comes in and they have that, and that kind of quality of, oh, hi, it brings up that early love.
Okay.
And that's how it can tap. If there's wounds there, it can really like open them. It can really bring that forward. But that's really good work if you can get it, because whatever's not free in you, in me, in us, will continue to play itself out in your life. And even though we're working on relationship right now, more specifically, the thing that's not free in relationship has its consequences in business, in money, in life, because it affects our ability to show up, to trust, to take risks, you know. And even though we've talked about relationship being more difficult and, you know, entrepreneurism, right? The thing is when you free up the thing in relationship, it will free up things in every area of your life. It just happens to be pretty sticky in relationship, but it is something that will slow you down or be a cap in other areas of your life. So when you
impacts each
other. So when you free up that which is not free, you begin to get free everywhere. That's why when you said, I feel so different, because you're freeing up things that are limitations that actually aren't true. They're just experiences that you had and that you made a story up about that continues to replay itself. You free that stuff up and wow, I mean, things become available to you that have never been available before. So it's really amazing work, but it's not for sissies. You know, like it was funny. I was listening to a relationship podcast the other day and it was so trite. I was like, really? Like, yeah, well, just, you know, just say thank you and just do these little things. And I'm like,
that's so superficial. No, we have to get deep.
Yeah. Now those things can create a container. Like if you have this rule called, we always go to bed appreciating each other. We don't go to bed angry. Like that creates safety. That creates trust.
Yeah.
But that's not the antidote. That's not the work. That's the container so that you're safe enough to do the work. Because the real work is, you know, when you want to kill him. And then you have to look at yourself.
Yeah.
Instead of killing them. That's the real work. And there has to be a certain amount of safety and connection to even let that come up. If you let something really big come up with somebody, it's actually because there's a level of safety you have with them, and it allowed it to come forward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good. And it's interesting, those crazy connections, you know, because I've had a couple in my life where it's, you know, you do feel that you're like, whoa. And then it's almost like there's that, like you're so attracted to each other because there's a wound there for each other to heal.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's the magnetic piece of this. And so anyone listening, anytime that you feel that crazy fast connection that it's kind of unexplainable, like how you said, be aware. And now I know that, you know, it's like, oh, wow. Okay. So there's a lesson here for me. That's amazing. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day because I think it's so fascinating. And yeah, it's definitely an area just like yours. That's been probably one of the most challenging for me in my life, but it's my journey. And obviously there's been a lot of work for me to do around here, and I'm grateful for it because it's really helped me heal a lot of childhood wounds, you know, and so I am glad that I'm becoming more free of that. And I think there's, you know, it's an ongoing thing. That's what I've discovered, that it doesn't stop. It just keeps going.
Right. And that's why, by the way, if you're like listening to a relationships expert that's like, oh yeah, we got it handled, like run, don't walk, because nobody has it handled. They really don't. Like there's definitely people like the Hendricks, right? They literally watch them like, wow, like they function totally different. You know, they're the unicorns of relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And they had to find their way. And we can learn from teachers in relationship. And this is true in entrepreneurism or whatever. It's like, but we have to find our own way. We can take some of that, and we can take some of that juju and some of those tools. But we may need something a little bit different because our life experience is different. And that's what I've learned along the way, is that there's certain things that work for me that I didn't learn anywhere else, but I was willing to go, what works for me? And at the end of the day, each of us has to do that with relationship or anything we're creating. Is like, what works for me? How do I want to do it? We've had this conversation with marketing, like what works for me, not what's everybody doing and what's working out there, but like what works for me. Same is true in relationship. You know, we have to figure out what works for us, and you know, be willing to get in that game and, you know, have the wins and the losses. But, you know, one of the things that I really believe that we're infinite, and that so exploration is infinite. Our genius is infinite. Our intelligence is infinite. So why wouldn't our journey be infinite? Why wouldn't, like, what I think a lot of times, like couples will come to me and they've had 10 really good years, and now they're in their shit. Somebody had an affair, some shit went down, blah, blah, right? And it's like, cool. And they go, what? You know, because their mind is like, oh, this must mean the end. It's like, actually, your relationship is asking for something more. It's asking for a different level. It's asking you to go somewhere different than you've been going before. Now, sometimes those kind of fallouts is meaning it's time to learn with someone else now, right? Oftentimes, those kind of problems are something inside of you saying, there's more here. We're playing small. Let's get to the more. Let's heal what we need to heal to come to a new level, right?
That's so awesome. And Esther kind of says the same thing. It's like, you're going to, and you've told me this, like, we grow so fast nowadays that we, you know, back 50 years, 100 years, we didn't have the tools that we now have. And so we're growing so quickly that, of course, we're going to have multiple relationships throughout our lifetime. And this is where Esther comes in. She says, you're going to have so many different relationships in your lifetime. You can either choose to have it with the one person or other people. But it's like you kind of like have to recreate that relationship. Right. And that's exactly what you're saying, like how awesome that is. And and maybe that's the kind of the topic we can end on, is just how society has had this certain look of what a relationship should look like, what marriage is nowadays versus, like, let's have that conversation right now. Because marriage back 50 years ago was set up not in love and not in connection. It was set up because of a system that worked for people.
Right. Yeah. And that worked. It was more about, marriage mostly was about fiscal, because like even in the early church, in the early Catholic Church, marriage was seen as sinful. Like it was like you needed to be monk-like, you needed to renounce all your passions, all your desires, and like
yikes.
Yeah, right. So marriage was like sort of a necessary evil so that they could propagate the species, and back in the hunter-gatherer days, right? We needed somebody to have the babies. We needed somebody to bring the meat in and all of that. Only really, truly in the last 40 years-ish has relationship been about love? Has it been about like, wow, like I really love this person and I want to share my life with them? Even though like my parents, I think my grandparents that raised me, had a certain level of in love at that time. Like for my grandma mom, like there was no other option for her besides to marry a man, right? She was born in 1913. Like the options were very, very small. If you weren't an Amelia Earhart or something like that, a very strong, adventurous type of person, like to live your life and to feel like you were going to survive, you had to find a man. You had to do that, And so I think relationship as a spiritual journey, as an intimate journey, as a healing journey, that's really new. And I think that's why so many of us are messed up at it, because there's no reference point. Our genetics is designed to be in survival, not in love. And so this is a brand new experiment on planet Earth, that we actually get together because we love each other and because we want a deeper level of fulfillment in our lives, right? And that's happening in every part of our lives. Like entrepreneurism, as soon as the iPhone came to be, that world completely changed. We all had access to be entrepreneurs. We didn't have to have $50,000 to put into a business, right? It's like our
everything
options,
online. Everything evolved dramatically.
And with that, so has the tools for change and consciousness and the tools of psychology that allows us to free up what's not free. And so we're changing at the speed of light. Like if you're on a conscious journey, you're like, I don't think I'm the same person I was 3 months ago. Like that's how fast I'm going. And so my number one prerequisite for anybody I'm relating with, whether it's a family member, whether it's a potential partner or mate or whatever, is like, it's not so much about where they are now, although I need to be interested in all of that. It's, are you willing to grow? Are you willing to look at yourself? Because I'm going to go fast. And if you're not willing to grow, I will outgrow you. And it will maybe have a 2-month relationship because I'm going to be doing this. Right. And so to me, that's the most vital thing you want to look for in looking at a relationship, because if you have that person that's willing to grow with you, then it's like you can actually, I think, create very beautiful long-term relationships. But you just have to realize you're going to get a new husband every year or so, because and you're going to be a new wife because you're doing that growth, and you're like, oh, who are you now? Oh, you're my new lover. Okay. But it's the same person because you're dynamically changing together.
Yes, that's so good. I've had relationships where that's happened, where it's not, there's a big gap in that growth. And I fully agree. I have to have somebody that's willing to, the same with you, that's definitely a number one priority, that are open and willing to grow. And I think that it's just the expectations of what a relationship should look like or a marriage should look like in society. It's almost like it's just not real. We've been given this picture, and we've been given this like movie almost, like this Disney story, of like, or the princess story of this is what love should look like. This is what it should feel like, or all the romantic movies. And I'm like, but that's not real, So what is real is these conversations, and what is real is what everyone's experiencing. And how awesome would it be that every couple just gets to create the relationship based on what their truth is and based on what works for them.
Yep. And you got to.
And how freeing is that? Like, how liberating is that?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of daily vows rather than like marriage vows of like, oh, I choose to be here today. Oh, and I choose to be, what can we create?
Yeah.
And one of the tools that I give people is to uncreate and destroy the relationship every day, so that you're relating from now and not from who the person was yesterday. That's one of the reasons, that's how sort of passion gets killed, is we decide who someone is. We do that to try to get safe, right? It's like, okay, I know this person, he shows up like this, he does this, and this is who he is, and this is who he is, and then we decide we know who they are, but we're infinite. Like, that's how you can actually keep the romance alive, is by going, oh, who are you today? What can we learn about each other today? Yeah. As opposed to, this is who you were yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. And I don't even really need to look at you because I already know you. Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, I've even learned a lot throughout this podcast. And again, I could continue talking about this. It's so fun, but what would be like the last, and whatever comes up for you as far as advice, or just, whatever you want to tell our listeners about relationship, what would that be?
If you really get that relationship is, to me, it's about two different things. It's about enjoyment and, having fun, and like, it's sort of the icing on the cake, I think, of relationship, of like life, right? And like, really get that it's a spiritual path. It's a growth path. Unless you want to just have a surface level relationship. If you want, and most people that I talk to do, they want something deeper. They want something more meaningful. They don't want to just go through the motions with somebody, right? Yeah. That's why a lot of people left jobs to find their own path. They don't want to just go through the motions. They want something to feel meaningful, right? If that's the kind of relationship that you want, then you have to know that it's going to be messy. You can't just walk away because it's messy. It's like, and sometimes it's right to walk away. It's that, it's like both. It's like knowing, and that's part of the growth of it, is like knowing, like, thank you for everything you've taught me, but I need to love you from a different house now.
Yes.
Like, or, okay, like, this is the face I want to learn with today and tomorrow. So let's wrestle. Like Brene Brown says something about, I think it's like, she says something like, let's get in the ring and wrestle.
Yes. I love her, by the way. She's amazing.
And let's do this. But that can also be fun. That doesn't have to be drama. That can be beautiful. The wrestling can be fun and beautiful too. And what if, the whole point of a relationship was just to have more joy and to be able to create more,
Wow, that's a beautiful ending to our, to finishing our podcast today. Thank you so much for being here with me. And I really loved this conversation. Probably one of my favorites, because it's so raw and real and so much truth. But also for our listeners, I mean, I know you're busy with your schedule and you're, I don't even know if you're taking any more clients, but if somebody is interested in a great life coach, such as you, that is has so much wisdom in all kinds of areas, and it is a conscious space for sure. It's not a linear coaching. It is, it is not linear. It is creation. It is conscious. It is spiritual. And and it's infinite, that type of creation. So if somebody is really drawn to you in this, could they reach out to you? I don't know how tapped out you are, but at least we should have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, there are, if I don't have an opening in the moment, I have openings all the time because I generally work with, 2, 3, 4-month contracts, and then somebody will cycle out and somebody will cycle in.
Perfect.
But also I have group mentoring programs, and there's a lot of different ways that you guys can, we can play and you can work with me. But you can go to my website, which is megansillito.com, MEGANSILLIT as in Tom O.com. I'm also on Facebook. I have a public page, what is that?
Business page.
I have a business page, but it's a public figure page.
Oh, public figure. Yeah,
I'm
she
a public,
is.
I'm a public figure. I have a public figure page and a regular page, and you can find me there too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for changing my life, and I'm sure you're changing many. And thanks for your time today. This was so fun.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I love it. I love talking to people who are in the conversation, because things can come out of the conversation just in your questions and things like that we both can learn from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Guys, I hope that this has been super helpful for you. I am sure it has, because if the one thing I know is that everyone has challenges in relationships. So let's continue growing. Let's continue learning, and let's continue loving. So hope you guys all have a great day, and thanks for listening.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.